We're going to now look at task number 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. First of all, task number 6, we're going to enter some data and we're going to look at putting a validation rule to stop invalid data being entered into a spreadsheet. This is to stop users putting silly data into spreadsheets which will mess up your spreadsheet. So going to the spreadsheet, we're going to enter in some data for Arthur Pole. I should say the first thing I've done though is I've copied all the data from task 5 and I've copied, edited and pasted it into a new sheet, and that sheet I'm going to call task 6 in a moment, and I'm going to add the data in that's described. You can see the new data I've added in here. I'm going to rename this sheet, rename it to task 6. I'm also going to highlight these 3 cells here, take the green square on the right, drag it down, and you'll notice that I've got the formula now working out values, or formally working out values for the max, the average and the comment there on Arthur's scores. You can see at the moment I can enter in any score. I could, instead of 10.3, easily have slipped in 20.3, which would probably be a world record. Now I'd like to avoid that error from happening of me accidentally entering in dodgy data, and we can use this validation rule. To do this, we do the following. I'm going to enter the data validation rules now. Here are the cells of interest. I don't want to have invalid data here, so I select data and data validation, and here are the settings. I'm going to only allow decimals between certain values, and it will be between 0 and I'll say 18, and I'll put a little input message, so as soon as you move the mouse over the box it's going to display this message: enter the bleep test score. And if there's an error, we're going to get a message, it's going to stop you and it will say invalid bleep test score, only scores between 0 to 15 are accepted. Okay, so now you can see that when I go near these cells, if I try and enter in 20.3, I get an error, only scores, I'm going to have to retry. It's going to force me to correct that to something that's acceptable. If I put a negative score in there, I'll get an error as well. And that's a way to do the validation rule. I'm going to plot a graph of the bar graph of the bleep test scores, the maximum bleep test scores for the boys. So we go back to the data. We can insert, and here are the graph types. Select the graph that you want. Quite like that kind of graph. Now it's gone and made its own choices here, so I don't want to do that. I want to select the data, and I don't want the girls, so I'm going to remove that. I'm going to add, and on this side will be the maximum scores for the boys, and here will be the labels for the horizontal axis, and this will be the boys' names displayed underneath. So I'm going to add the series name I'll call boys, the values of the bleep test scores I'm going to select now. Use this little button here to select the cells of interest. Now we're going to be using their max score apparently, so we'll do it from 10 all the way down to 3.4, and there are all the scores. Okay, and then for the to get the names of the boys underneath here, we now need to edit this and select their names. So I'm going to go right down there, and there are their names, and now their names are appearing underneath. Now cancel that. Oops. There we are. I hope you avoided the problem I had there. So you can click on the word boys and we can edit this title. and enter the title we want, which is Bleep Test Scores for the Boys, and you can move that around as you wish. So now we've got all the boys displayed there. You can resize this by clicking on it and making it big. We could bring it down to the bottom, put it over here and make it nice and big. And there we go. Now for the next graph. In this task we're going to try and produce a scatter plot of the student age versus the average student score. So you've got to make sure that you've got data here all the way through for ages and scores. So we're going to be plotting the average score there against the age. Make sure you have got numbers in all the cells. Now a quick way to actually plot a graph is to select the data first. So I'm going to do that here. So here are all the ages, and I've selected all the ages, and here are all the scores. Now they're in two different places, so if I select one, the other disappears. So what you need to do is select the one. Now after you've selected the one column, I'm now going to press Control, hold the Control down, and I can now select ages. So it's now got them both, and then we go into Insert and we can go to recommended graphs. We don't want the line graph, we would like a scatter plot, and the scatter plot I'm going to look at is probably going to be that one there, and so there it is. And I've zoomed in to make this a little bit bigger for you, and again we can click on the title and we can enter a good title in there, and we can also click on the axis here, right click, and we should be able then to format the axis and decide what the maximum minimum limits are. Now there's no data below 8, so what I'm going to do is say that the minimum value to display is 8, and then you can see that that's stretched the data across there, and here you can see the Bleep test score, and here are the ages of students from 8 years up to 17. You'll notice there's a plus sign to the right of your graph, which is very useful. You click on that plus sign, you'll notice that it highlights lots of little elements here. So if we go to Axis Titles, all of a sudden the Axis Titles appear. So I just click that on, and you can just click on an Axis title, and then you can either type in the box, or you can actually type up here student age. Click on the Axis title and you can type up here Bleep test score. And then finally, if you click on the plus sign, you go right down to the bottom, there's a trend line. Click on that and you'll notice that we've now got a line of best fit between all the data points. If you experiment, you'll find there are lots of other options that you can play with on here. Error bars, you can put a legend on there, and you can even put data labels, but so you can see all the numbers on the data points. But that will do for now. Task number 9 is to use a macro to do a sort, and we're going to create 2 macro buttons. Now you might not know what this does, but here are 2 buttons here. If I click on one called alpha sort, it sorts all the data into alphabetical order, and if I click on class sort, you'll notice it's sorted everything into the classes, years 7, 8, 9 and 10. So how do we do that? How can we get Excel to perform these tasks on the click of a button? Right, I'm going to record a macro. Now a macro is a sequence of instructions that Excel will record. So rather than me having to perform the instructions one by one with a mouse, I can record several instructions and store them. I'll show you what I mean, it'll become more clear. So I've gone to View, and we've got something here called Macros. I'll click on this arrow here, and you can record a macro. And a macro, what I'm going to do is record, click record, I'll call this macro, well I'll call this alpha sort, and that's going to do an alphabetic sort. So what I'm going to do is do an alphabetic sort. Now it's recording all the time while I'm doing this. It's recording all my strokes. So I highlight the area, I go to data, I want to do a sort. The sort I want is to sort that whole area based upon column C. OK, and go back to macro, view macro, and stop recording. So that's the first macro, and then I'm going to record a second macro. Record macro. I'll call this, I think it asked us to do a class sort, wasn't it? Class sort, yeah. I'll call this class sort, and this time again I'm going to highlight the area of interest. I'm going to go to data, I'm going to do a sort, but this time I'm not going to sort on column C, I'm going to sort so that all the data is in year groups. So I'll go to the year, which is E, I'll do a sort on E, and there you go, it's sorted them by year group. And now I want to end this macro, so view, stop recording, and if I go to macros, view macros, you'll see I've stored 2 macros there. Right, what I want to do now is go to home, and I'm going to insert an auto shape. Insert a text box. I'll put 2 text boxes, one there, and I'll try and insert another text box there. And the first text box I'm going to call alphabet sort. This text box I'm going to call class sort. So now what will happen is I've clicked on that box, and if you right click you'll see an option called assign macro, which means please connect a macro with this box, and I'm going to connect this box with the alphabet sort, and I'm going to do the same on this one. I'm going to assign macro, and I'm going to connect it to class sort. So now if I clicked on alphabet sort I should get an alphabetic sort. If I click on class sort I get a class sort. So I can just make it do either one I want. You can see I've made one box a nice colour there, and if I right click on this box, go home, and I can select a colour here and we'll make it a different colour. So now I'm away. Hopefully you can see how this would save a lot of time. It'd be very good to include macros for advanced marks in your controlled assessment. I hope you can see that having macros that can be very complicated and quite long, you can save a lot of time. Having done the task once, record it, connect it to a button, and you can get it to redo that task whenever you wish. The final optional task is something you can discuss with your teacher. It's a more difficult Excel function task. Make sure you've done tasks 1 to 9 though. Please make sure you've done all the screen dumps, print out all your screen dumps and hand them in to your teacher. I will say this about that final task, it's task 10, not task 9. I've used what's called a nested if function. That's an if function inside an if function, and you can see here I've got intermediate, advanced, beginners options here, and there is a way, there it is, that you can do it.